Quick reminder, just so I know we're about to begin, I just want to make sure everybody can find their raise hand function in the bottom right-hand side. I know we missed a couple of people at the last meeting. We just want to make sure that Greg has the opportunity to call on people one at a time when they're ready to comment. So if you can use that raise hand function, I will let him know who has got their hands up so we can call people once at a time to give their feedback, comments, and questions. Thanks.
The clock says that it's 6 p.m. and time to open the February 23rd, 2021 City of Oak Harbor Planning Commission meeting. Due to COVID-19, there will be no physical meeting location per Washington Proclamation 20-28. Meetings may be viewed live via YouTube or Channel 10. To listen to the live meeting, please call 623-404-9000. Meeting ID 149-887-6560. First item on the agenda this evening is the roll call, and let the record show that all commissioners are present this evening. Second item is the approval of the minutes of January 26, 2021. Do I have a motion? Anyone? Tony has made the motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second the motion.
Okay, Bruce seconds the motion. All in favor, raise their little hand. All opposed? Same sign. Motion passes. To leave a public comment that will be made part of the meeting record, please call and leave a message at 360-279-4512. This is the part of the agenda where we address the public comment being accepted for anything that otherwise is not on the agenda. And because there's no one present here, you certainly are welcome to make that phone call. Item 4 on the agenda is public meetings and hearings, and the first item is the Model Home Code update. This is a public hearing. This is for the Planning Commission to consider a text amendment to the zoning ordinance, section 21-100.010 model homes. This amendment would provide clarity regarding eligibility, application requirements, and security. We're going to be entertained by Development Services Director David Cool this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a PowerPoint for you here tonight, so I'll go ahead and start that. There we go. You may not remember, but back on November 15th, 2016, ordinance number 1780 was...
Sorry to interrupt. Is there a chance we can, we can't hear you very well?
Okay, sorry about that. You got that? Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Back on November 15th, 2016, ordinance number 1780 was adopted by the City Council. And that's what established the model home code we are currently using. We've been using that. We used that one time, and we've used that for the Howard's Point subdivision just recently. That established our current model home code, and we found that going through that process, there was a desire for more flexibility in the code. So consequently, we're proposing a new code here tonight. The new code, if you've looked through it, will establish the ability to construct streets, water, sewer, and stormwater at the same time as the model homes. All this infrastructure will need to be completed and accepted before you can occupy the model homes. So the model homes, while they're under construction, if they finish early, they will not be allowed to be used as a model home until all that infrastructure is done and accepted for completion. This approach will allow more speed by allowing the homes to be built at the same time as the infrastructure. Normally, a final plat is complete and all the infrastructure is done prior to the homes being built. And so what this does essentially is it allows a developer to come in, build all the infrastructure at the same time they're putting in model homes, and essentially gain about 6 months' time by doing all this at one time. My guess is they'll probably have to put a substantial amount of the infrastructure in first before they actually start the model homes, but it'll give them a significant jump getting a lot of this in early. There we go. Well, did that go too far? Okay. So some of the specific changes that have occurred while we've been writing this code as a result of talking to members of the development community, as well as people within the staff, include the need for a charged fire hydrant prior to framing rather than at the beginning of the construction of the model home. There was a concern. Typically, you have a fire hydrant that has to be installed prior to the construction of a model home in most model home codes. Well, we decided through construction that you don't really need to have a charged fire hydrant until you actually have lumber on the site. And so you wouldn't need to have lumber until you start framing. So typically you put in all your concrete and your other dirt work prior to putting in your framing. So we felt like there was no need to have the charged fire hydrant to be there until the framing is ready to go. So we did allow that delay to occur actually in the ordinance, as well as the ability for the fire marshal to sign off on it at that point. And then also the fire marshal will allow the access road in case somebody gets hurt on a job site and a aid car has to go out and help somebody off the job site. We need to have the fire marshal sign off on an access road to the model homes. So the idea is you want to have at least some way to get in and out of there just in case the terrain is pretty rough during that rough stage of construction. We're also going to require performance bonds. Those are bonds that are there to secure the installation of the infrastructure. We'll have restrictive covenants and hold harmless agreements there to protect the city, just in case the infrastructure does not get completed or the development fails, or perhaps things happen like the subdivision expires. We'll have all those methods of security in place just to ensure that we have an exit strategy for us if something goes wrong. And that's what all those portions at the very end of the code that if you've had a chance to look through it, that's what all that stuff is for. So we're protected and the developer will be protected as well. Steps we've taken so far are the typical steps we take in this process. We always do our SEPA checklist and we do our SEPA notice. We've sent this document to the Department of Commerce and we've asked for a 10-day expedited review. And they've sent back a notice saying they've received that from us. And the public hearing notices have been done. So our recommended motion on this particular item is we move, this is your recommended motion, so I've just put that up here for you, as well as that's in the staff report to make it easier for you. So we're available for any questions you may have.
Commissioners, any questions? No questions? At this time, I need to open the public hearing, so I'll open the public hearing. And then I'm going to ask for any input from anyone present or in the faraway land, and having Eric Marshall.
Thank you. I just had one question on the length of the building permit. It says it must be completed or removed within 6 months of issuing the permit. What's the standard time for a building permit? Is it a year or is it 6 months?
Is there a section he's reading out of? Is there a section you're reading out of?
Yes, sir. It's 21-100 under completion.
Do you know what section he's reading?
It's 21 dash or dot 100 dot 060.
Oh, okay, so you're reading the first section, the model homes and all associated improvements shall be completed or removed within 6 months of issuance of a building permit. Is that the section you're reading?
Yes.
Okay, yes. Typically, I think a building permit is good for 6 months, but I don't know that for a fact.
Okay, thank you.
But I'll check on that.
Thank you.
I think in this instance, our attorney has written this language because this is an interim code or an interim process that essentially allows model homes to be built before a final plat is done. And if normally you have to have a final plat to actually get a building permit. And without a final plat, you don't have a legal lot to build on. And so he goes on to the next sentence where he says, in the event of any of the following occurrences, the applicant consents to the city filing a lien against the property in the amount to recover the cost of demolition or completion of the model home in the city's discretion. And then he goes on to list 3 items. 1, a preliminary plat approval has expired and no extension has been granted. 2, the subdivision was denied final plat approval and/or required substantial improvements not consistent with the design of the preliminary approved plat in the opinion of the Development Services Department. And 3, the approval period has expired consistent with Chapter 2120 OHMC Ordinance 1780. So what our attorney has done is he's lined out a series of situations that it could occur during the development process should something fail. And so he's outlined 6 months to actually get the house done, and if it doesn't get completed within 6 months, these other triggers could also kick in. And it's designed to make sure that everybody knows what's going to happen if say a final plat does not get completed. Typically, I would think it would bring on a lot of negotiation if a developer got 5 months into it and they had a lot of infrastructure installed, model homes going up, and they couldn't quite complete it on time. They would probably request an extension of some sort, and that would be a chance for us to have a conversation and do an agreement. So that would be my interpretation of that.
So if I may, I'm looking at, I've had to get a couple building permits for a remodel on my building, and each one of my permits were good for a year. So I was given a year to remodel my building, and it seems like we're giving developers 6 months to build homes. For consistency, I would think we would stick with a year. You know, if a remodel permit is good for a year, then a building permit, I would think, would be a year.
That's a good point. I don't know the answer to that.
Thank you.
Any other comments, commissioners?
I'll make a comment.
Bruce?
In response to the 6 months, you know, remodel permits and permits of that sort are a different breed of permit. Typically, a building permit is issued and some type of action has to occur and some kind of inspection would have to occur in that 6 month period of time to remain valid. That's what they're talking about here.
My only concern is with the wording completed. Must be completed within 6 months.
Yeah, Eric, I was concerned about that too, in looking at it. And I know timelines are difficult these days to try and get something built. And it does seem a little abrupt and maybe a little bit short. And Director, correct me if I'm wrong, the folks on the ground, it's not going to be like guys' grocery games where they say, okay, you got 6 months, go. There's going to be a lot of pre-planning and leading up to it. And you're not just going to, call them one day and say, okay, today start building. So in other words, I think the people on the ground are going to be able to navigate through this building process so that the 6 months shouldn't be an issue. Am I right on that, Director?
Well, I think typically, by the time they get to a building permit for a model home, I would think they would have had, obviously, plan review and they'd be ready to go. And a model home shouldn't take 6 months to build. But obviously, problems can happen, I suppose.
Well, I'll further that discussion.
I'm sorry, I didn't.
I'll further that discussion. I think the first property this could impact is the development that's over on Fort Nugent Road. Is that correct?
I can't understand the question.
Bruce, can you repeat the comment or question?
Yeah, my understanding is the first development this will impact is the property over on Fort Nugent Road, the new development.
Oh, the question was the first development this will affect is the property on Fort Nugent Road, which is known as Howard's Point.
Yes.
This particular project is already under the purveyance of the current model home code. The current model home code is what they're following under. So this particular code will not affect that development.
All right. Okay, thank you.
Commissioners, any other comments? Questions? If not, I'm going to close the public hearing. The public hearing is closed. And now I would entertain a motion from one of the commissioners.
Commissioner Marshall, is this something that you feel strongly enough about to make a motion to table this until you get an answer on this 6 month deal, or are you good?
No, I'm good. I'm not a builder. And so if the consensus is that we can get it done, or builders can get it done in 6 months, then I'm comfortable with that. I just was curious for consistency, that's all.
Then, Mr. Chairman, I move to recommend approval for the updated model home code, OHMC section 21.100 to the City Council.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I will second the motion.
Call for the question. All in favor, raise your hand. All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Thank you. And thank you, David.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Next item on the agenda this evening is the Shoreline Master Program, and this is a public meeting. This is an opportunity for the Planning Commission to continue discussion and ask questions regarding the Shoreline Master Program proposed periodic review amendments. And Senior Planner Dennis Lefebvre, are you there, Dennis?
I am, Mr. Chair. Can you all hear me very well?
Yes.
I assume you can. Okay, good. Sorry for the inconvenience without the video, but I'm parked in the QFC Port Townsend parking lot right now due to the delay that the ferry gave me. But regardless, I am here and happy to say that last month you received the draft report for the Shoreline Master Program periodic review, which is required under state law. The draft obviously had all the strike through and underlines of all the proposed changes, as well as the 4 supplementary documents that more or less gave a better explanation as to what the some of those revisions were and what for. As the chair mentioned, this is a public meeting and basically a review session for the Planning Commission tonight. We are not looking to take any action on this document. And just a few brief notes before we open it up for any questions on the next steps. By council direction a year or so ago, we are combining our review process with the Department of Ecology's process, which requires a 30-day open comment period, which we are scheduling for March 1st through March 31st. All of those comments that we received during that period will be responded to by staff and then also provided to Planning Commission for their review. During that 30-day public comment period, we are also required to have a public hearing, which we are scheduling for the Planning Commission's meeting next month. And again, no action will be taken by the Planning Commission at that meeting. It's basically to solicit some additional comments by the public or yourselves again. We are in process of completing the SEPA determination of non-significance. That should be completed very soon, and we will also open up a 14-day comment period for that document. Upon closure of the public comment period, we will prepare a package that is pretty well prescribed by the Department of Ecology to review all of the documents that we received, all of the comments that we received, so they can engage in what they call a determination of consistency. Once we receive that determination of consistency, and they have a couple of weeks to do that with a couple of week extension, so we had to build that into our process. But once we receive that determination of consistency, then we can proceed with our local adoption process, which means, again, we would have another public hearing with the Planning Commission. And at that point, we would be seeking your recommendation to City Council, which we would take to them in their meeting in June and have this all wrapped up by our June 30th deadline. We will then prepare another package for Department of Ecology with the resolution adopting the document and all of the revisions for their final certification, which actually should be turned around fairly quickly since they've been engaged in this process up to this point. So with that, I would certainly entertain any questions that you have on the document or the supplementary documents that have been prepared. But again, you have plenty of opportunities in subsequent meetings to solicit comments to me as well. So I'd open it up to any comments or questions that you might have.
Do we have any? I see none, Dennis.
Okay. And again, if there are any questions as you go through this document in the future, we've got a couple of meetings yet to make those comments be known to me. So I'm always open.
Okay. Safe travels, Dennis.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you,
Commissioners.
You bet. The next item on the agenda this evening is the horizontal mixed-use discussion. This is the non-CBD commercial district. This is a public meeting. Staff will present further information on the development of standards for horizontal mixed-use development in certain commercial zone districts within the city. The discussion will guide the development of a draft ordinance addressing these issues. And Associate Planner Mr. Lindenberg is going to take this over this evening for us. Ray? Go on.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the Planning Commission. I hope you can all hear me okay. I'm going to start a presentation here. This evening, I'm just going to do a kind of a brief presentation and talk about what it is that we're looking at with mixed-use horizontal version. And what I kind of describe this as, or my feeling is, that I'm standing on the high dive right now, ready to jump in, and I'm just waiting for that kind of push from the back. So you all are going to be my push off the high dive, and then we'll really get into it. But right now, what I want to talk about is some of the ideas and concepts that we have. And then the next time we meet and talk about this, hopefully I will have for you some actual language that can be inserted into our code to make some of this stuff happen. So what I'm going to do is start sharing my screen now. And I hope everybody can see that okay. That is my title page there. So let me see if I can figure out where my screen is. Okay, so the horizontal mixed use. I cannot find where the other screen is. Hold on just a minute, sorry. There we go, okay. So horizontal mixed use. We talked about it being a continuation of work we'd previously done with the Central Business District, and how mixed uses were already allowed, but those mixed uses should be considered to be vertical mixed use because they refer to those uses happening in the same building. And so when you see a vertical, or when you see mixed use in that form, you usually think of the residential on top of retail, or some variation of that. What we're looking at doing is something more along the lines of this diagram here, where you have separate buildings housing different uses, but they're still on the same site. So the effects of that horizontal orientation is it gives a little bit of balance to the development and allows a little bit greater flexibility for developers to perhaps do one of those uses first, kind of gauge some of the market forces that go along with that. It creates more of a kind of suburban appearance, allows for parking lots and commercial uses along the roadway, like a restaurant or a drive-in or things like that. And it does generally produce a more automobile-oriented environment. I'll show you some examples of that as I get through the presentation here. And why the change? We have some interest from a couple of developers, and there are some interesting potential locations for development like this. Some benefits, again, the increased balance and flexibility. Potential negatives is it becomes kind of a de facto rezone if we're saying that you can build residential on commercial land. We're risking losing some of that commercially zoned property. Whether or not that's actually a significant issue with the rise of Amazon and getting things delivered, it remains to be seen at this point, but is definitely something that's kind of out there. So we have identified through this review process, the last time I talked to you, some potential locations and zone districts that we might want to think about doing horizontal mixed use in. Those three districts are the C3, C5, and RO zone district. And so what I'm going to do is kind of switch presentations here real quick, and we'll take a look at some maps. So, oh, good grief. How do I make this go away? I've got too many screens in front of me. I apologize for this. Okay. Okay, so right here what we have is a map of Oak Harbor with our commercial zone districts highlighted in color. So we have the red zone districts kind of going from the pink to the red. That's the C1 through the C3, C5 zones, C4 also. You have the brown of the residential office RO, and then you have our CBD in the purple down that area. So to give you an orientation here, this is the highway going through town. Central Business District, and then going out of town to the south there, and then this is Whidbey Avenue as it goes across. Now, this again shows all of our commercial zone districts in the city. So we don't want to focus on all of them. We want to allow some of these other zone districts to kind of be what they are, and that includes the CBD district, which we've already gone through and made changes to. We don't see any need to allow horizontal mixed use there. In fact, we think it's probably inappropriate to allow it there. Because we're trying to encourage that traditional historic downtown of the vertically stacked uses. And so what we're looking at here are some of our target districts, and that taking out the CBD and taking out the C1, which is, C1 is just this little pink area right here, a very small commercial district. And also taking out the C4, which is up here at the north end of town. Those districts would not be appropriate because they're north of the 16th Street alignment, which any areas north of that alignment there do not allow for residential uses anyway, so we're going to leave that out. So that gives us a pretty good target area of commercial zones. As I mentioned in our previous discussion, this was a specific location. There's another specific location down here off of Atlas Street, and then also down here on Pioneer Way, closer to the highway. So those are specific locations that we've had discussions with people about doing horizontal mixed use. Now, the interesting thing is when you take a look at the residential office zone district and think about some of the uses that are going in and already existing on Whidbey Avenue in our RO zone, horizontal mixed use is kind of already happening because in those individual parcels, you might have a residential project, a multi-unit apartment building right next door to a dentist's office. And it seems to work pretty well. We haven't had issues with people complaining about incompatibility or anything like that. It seems to work pretty well. So we feel like moving forward with allowing this in other zone districts kind of as a, rather than just having it kind of organically working its way through, we can actually put it into the code and have it work out that way as well. And so when we take a look at those zone districts, we see that there are a couple of, well, there's one in particular. I wanted to focus on what I understand to be called Chimes Corner here. And I think that that might be a place that we would want to perhaps restrict horizontal mixed use from happening, because I feel like that corner has kind of the potential to be a secondary CBD, if you will, a kind of traditional walkable location where you have the stacked uses instead of horizontal uses. And so there are a couple of little locations like that that we might want to look at restricting horizontal mixed use. But other than that, I think that looking at the C3 and C5 zones as potential targets for allowing that horizontal mixed use make a lot of sense. So again, because we're looking at just introducing those into specific locations, the idea, the concept that I have, and I'll guide you through some of the other ordinances of similar jurisdictions in a few here. The concept that I have is to have that wording entered into the C3 and C5 and RO zone districts that allows for horizontal mixed use, and then having a separate section that will introduce development standards. And some of those standards would include frontage requirements for how wide the property needs to be to make sure that we have enough room to handle traffic coming and going from residential and commercial properties. Landscaping standards, and also some standards to mitigate the possibility of a half-finished project. For instance, if you have a situation where a parcel is proposed to be commercial at the street frontage and residential in the back, and the residential part of the project is completed and then the commercial project never happens, we want to make sure it doesn't just turn into a weed patch out by the road there. So there's got to be a way that we can figure out to mitigate that potential and make sure that doesn't become an issue for us. So what I'm going to do now is get into some ordinance examples real quick. I'm not going to try and read through all of them, but I did want to hit some high points here. I don't know if you can read at the top there. I picked 5 similar jurisdictions or close by jurisdictions: Gig Harbor, Mukilteo, Port Townsend, Snoqualmie, and Tumwater. And some of the high points of these ordinances are kind of interesting. Gig Harbor, for instance, they kind of focus on the larger sites. They require at least a 10-acre parcel. I don't think that that's going to be practical for us. We don't have a lot of 10-acre parcels in our city, and I think if we were to restrict it to a large size parcel, whether or not it's 10 acres or 5 acres, then we're not going to get a lot of buy-in. We need to make it a little bit more flexible than that. In Mukilteo, one of the things I noticed is that their design standards or their standards for mixed-use development are very design-specific, and that's how they actually title it. And so when you go through here, you see design review, overall district design, architectural, building form, et cetera. But the interesting concept is they do talk about the hours and the dynamic of the living space, of having people living and working in close proximity. So the purpose statement is interesting there, and they're focusing on kind of a CBD type setup there. When you scale down, or when you scroll down through there, it talks about buildings should provide and enhance the pedestrian scale and orientation of the district. And then it talks about very specific design details, which are already addressed in our code through the design regulations and guidelines documents. So this is probably not the direction that we'll go. It's very detailed, which is good, but I think we have a lot of these details already covered in our code. Moving over to Port Townsend, they have a couple of specific districts that they've established, a neighborhood mixed-use center and community mixed-use center. So they have a couple of pinpointed locations. The interesting thing is they do use a matrix, which I hope to move us towards, to migrate towards, so that we can put all of our zone districts next to each other and have an easy comparison on what uses are allowed. And perhaps one of those uses is mixed use horizontal or mixed use vertical. And then you can just go across and find an X or permitted or whatever it is that indicates that you can do that. Over in Snoqualmie, they have a separate district again, the mixed use MU district. The interesting purpose and objective they have here to enable development within the city is imaginative. The building design is compatible with mixture of land uses that will encourage pedestrian rather than automobile access. So again, we're kind of focusing on that concept of a downtown area. I think that some of our horizontal mixed use concepts that we're getting from actual developers here are not really focusing on the idea of having, a downtown center. They're focusing on the idea of being able to be flexible and creative with their site planning and utilizing their land to the best of, the highest and best for their property. It talks about encouraging the mixes of land use both horizontally and vertically there on one parcel or several combined parcels. And then it talks about also having a 10-acre minimum, and it also talks about a large percentage of open space, 35%. Again, because we're thinking about smaller properties, I'm not sure that that's practical to require 35% open space, but I think open space is definitely something that we will need to address and make sure that we're getting so that you have a pleasant place for people to live. It's not just the backside of a shopping center kind of thing. That's not what we want to have. Moving on to Tumwater, their intent of the mixed-use zone district is a mixture of land uses in close proximity. It doesn't say if it's on top, in one building or in multiple buildings, and that makes for a lot of flexibility there. And then their overall goal is to change from strict commercial development, low intensity and non-pedestrian uses to a mixed-use pedestrian, auto, and transit-oriented corridor. And so what we see here is there's a bunch of different reasons and rationales and ways that communities are trying to address this issue, having mixed use. So I think it's given a lot of ideas and a lot of concepts, and I think that we're going to be able to come up with something that fits our code really well. And so I'm excited to, like I said, jump off the high dive and get into some text to present to you next time. And so what I want to do now is there are some questions about what it is that these horizontal mixed uses look like. And so I found a few examples. I found 3 examples from places I used to live in Utah that are good examples of what it is you might expect to see in a project like that. They're a little bit larger because they're in a metropolitan area, but it's going to give you kind of a good idea of what it is we're looking at. The first one, this is an aerial photo that was taken from back in 2002 before this site was developed. It's called Redstone. It's on the highway to Park City, going into the ski areas. So it's definitely a nice area. And what they've done here is they've taken this piece that you see in the green here. The reason it's kind of oddly shaped is they're protecting this large kind of meadow area and riparian area here. They did some wetland restoration and things like that over here. But what they've done is included a large commercial center that has kind of that traditional main street that a lot of commercial centers are kind of going to right now. That's more pedestrian oriented. There is a large parking lot, but the actual stores and offices are more of a pedestrian environment. And then they put the residential to the rear of the property. There are no residential units on top of commercial here, which is kind of interesting. They could have done it because there are 2- and 3-story buildings in there, but just kind of going through, and I'll just go ahead and zoom to now. This is what it looks like. And so you have kind of this main street that goes through with parking on it, and your commercial spaces here, and then you have multi-unit residential in the back. And as we zoom into the street view there, I'll show you what it looks like on the ground. So you have kind of a mix of businesses. You've got a brew pub right here. You have some shops down at the lower level. You have some offices up on top. Like I said, there aren't any residential units up here. These are all offices on the second floor. Obviously, the architecture is very specific to the location, the kind of mountain location, but that's what it looks like from the commercial portion. And then pretty much what happens is you make a right turn here, and you can zoom around, and then it goes straight into the residential area. And this is not necessarily the most attractive location to walk through, but it is, it is provided for people to be able to get from one space to the other. And then when you get over into the actual residential area, this is what they look like. Is you have these multi-unit buildings with parking courts in between. This photo is actually a little bit older than the other photo that I just showed you. That's why the trees look a little bit smaller. This is from 2007. But that's what the project looks like. And so they completely separated out the commercial and residential uses. Like I said, it's a much larger project than anything that we would probably see here. This is about, gosh, I didn't measure the size of it. We can do that real quick. Measurements. So it's 39 acres there. It's got about 234 residential units, 230-ish residential units on about 40 acres. And again, like I said, there's large parking area here. There's more kind of the big box stores on this side of the project. So those are kind of your anchor stores that bring people in. I believe there's a Bed Bath & Beyond and some other larger stores. And as you go on the other side here, there's a grocery store and some other kind of more typical strip mall type places over there. Heading back to Salt Lake City, in the center of the city, you can see that this is in the middle of a very urban area. There is a light rail station right over here. So this entire area has been significantly changing over the years. This is a aerial photo from 2002. So it used to be a very industrial, lots of trucking and warehousing kind of facility locations there. What they've done here is this is a new grocery store, a Winco grocery store. And then there are about 50 units of residential over here. And this was all developed as one. You can see that when you zoom in here, there's the pedestrian connection. There is a design theme there, a landscaping theme. Everything's about the same. You have about an 80,000 square foot grocery store here, and then some commercial paths that all go along the main thoroughfare here. This is State Street through Salt Lake City, a very heavily trafficked road. And there's a light rail station right out here as well that's more recent than the other main line that goes north and south. And the last one, and the real reason, honestly, that I kind of am a little concerned about the idea of projects being half-built. This one's in Sandy, which is a suburb. If we scroll back in time again, go back to 1997, this is kind of one of those typical farmland pieces that's left over. It's been surrounded by development. And again, it's on State Street, which is a major thoroughfare. And so what happened here is this site was built to a density of about 17 units per acre. And they built, a number of those kind of 5-6 unit buildings. And we can take a look here on the ground that have the garages. They're not apartment buildings, but they're more of kind of townhouses that look like that. And they've also got some 3-4 story buildings that more of your typical apartments like these over here. Again, this is about 17 units per acre for the entire parcel. This is a little bit more dense than we would be looking at, but again, it gives you a good idea of what's possible here. The problem with this one is that this entire area on the front was set aside to be commercial. And in the years that this has been under development since 2008-ish, and granted there was a bit of a hiccup around 2008, but since that time it's been 12, 13 years now, and they're just now starting on some of these commercial uses, and it was literally a weed patch leading up to that. So that is a little bit of a concern. I think that there are standards that we would include, maybe that they have to do their street trees and their sidewalk improvements and plant grass or something like that to prevent that from happening. And somehow, ensuring the maintenance is there, because I don't want to see that happen. I don't want to have a situation where we have an ugly weed patch that sits for a decade or more. So that is a little bit of a concern for me, but I think it's something that we can address pretty easily. So that will kind of bring it to a close for my presentation. What we're doing here, our process again, I'm going to dive into the text and getting a draft together, and that will be the next time I see you. We'll be getting conceptual language to you, and then we'll focus on public outreach, get comments from folks, see what they think about the ideas and the concepts, and then we'll have the process go from there with SEPA and the paperwork that goes along with that. So with that, I will open up to any comments or questions.
Commissioners have any questions, comments at this time?
Ray, I do appreciate it. I think I was one of the ones that said, hey, do you have an example of anybody that's doing it this way and doing it right? And I think you provided that. And I appreciate you looking into some of the other, cities and towns that we can be familiar with and what they're doing. And, you don't want to reinvent the wheel if we're going to go at something like this. So see what's working for folks and what isn't. And I like it. It's exciting. I like the creativity aspect of it. And I know that you guys will, walk them through, all the stages of the process, and you're not going to let them do anything too weird. So I'm super cool with it.
Ray, I had one question. You referred to Chimes Corner in that area as maybe exempt. How do you go about doing that exemption when you draft up new code?
Well, the way I would picture that is there are a couple of options there. We could either do overlay zones for what we do allow, or we can do an overlay for Chimes Corner specifically. It says that that's not allowed here. Or the other option is to come up with a new zone district, which I don't think is really needed or necessary. There are a number of ways of doing it. I honestly haven't really considered that. My main consideration is to see if there is interest in, I don't know if protecting is the right word, but encouraging, Chimes Corner, that area to develop more in that traditional way, or if it's just one of those things where people are like, it's not that big of a deal, or which way do we want to go? And so I think my goal in that would be to write the code so that it could be applied to locations after the fact if needed. And so what you have is you have this code, and it can be applied to all C3 or C3 and C5 or certain areas of C3 or whatever it is. And so when we present the language to you folks and to the public, we can say, look, we can either apply this to all of our commercial zones, with the exception of the CBD, or we can apply it to just certain commercial zones or just certain areas. And there's flexibility in that. And maybe that's what we do. Maybe we determine that we only apply it to the C5 or the C3 zone district and use that as kind of a proof of concept. And if it works out, then great, we expand it out to other areas or something like that. So I like the idea of allowing flexibility. I don't like the idea of adding more work to, create problems down the way. I want to make it as easy as possible to implement and as easy as possible to have the public be able to utilize it too.
Thank you, Ray. Any other comments? Amy?
Ray, what do you think is a more typical lot size and acreage for our purposes?
Probably 2 to 3 acres. And there are a couple that, the one in particular, and my map is not working, otherwise I'll bring it back up, but the one in particular I think is about an acre. It's fairly small. And so I think that the key thing is not so much the size. I mean, the ones I showed you are obviously large because that's what they are. But I think that if you allow creativity and you allow kind of common sense standards, 35% open space is not going to be practical for most of these. That's a lot of space and it doesn't pencil. So we want to make sure that it makes sense for everybody and it's good for the community as well. If they're located in an area that's close to a park or other amenities, the beach, whatever that is, then maybe you don't need to do a large open space or any open space. Maybe you can connect to that somehow or draw that and utilize the existing amenities as your own and find another way to provide some sort of benefit. So I think there's flexibility involved there, but they're definitely not going to be large projects. We just don't have the land.
Cool. Overall, I'm really excited about this. I think there's a lot of options with that.
I am as well.
Any other questions? Yes, Bruce. Bruce, you're muted.
Okay, I'm very familiar with this type of a development, Ray, and I'm behind it 100%. And I've actually seen some very positive developments created just like this. Some of them have been on a grander scale, but they would also fit into, some smaller, maybe 3 to 5 acres, where if you have a serious developer that comes in and sees the potential of the residential, and I really like those row type houses, especially where they've got the steps that go up. I've really seen some good concepts drawn up like that. And it's within walking distance to other retail stores, whether it be restaurants, a town market, something like that. They really do work out very well. And I'm glad to see that we're going in this direction. Also, with the smaller scale development, maybe, there's room for affordability in those homes. And I think that's what the city is looking most at instead of these, $500,000 homes. So I think this is a positive step. I think it looks good where we're at right now.
Thank you. And it's interesting, I forgot one of the codes, I can't remember which one it was, talked about specifically what you just said, is that it can be a way of providing affordable housing in locations where housing wasn't previously contemplated. The idea of doing kind of a de facto rezone kind of looms over my head. I don't want to start taking away really commercially zoned property, but at the same time, I think there's an opportunity there, like you said, to provide affordability.
But I'm just going to carry on with the same scenario, and I'm thinking about it from a standpoint of, let's take the shopping center, the retail center over there where Rite Aid is at. What all of a sudden would happen if Rite Aid was to say, okay, we're moving out? There's already a number of retail locations that are there that are not occupied. And if, and the likelihood of getting somebody, a large developer, to come in there to fill the Rite Aid store could be a challenge. But if the developer was to actually have vision and see the row type houses up on that half of the lot, it would really be a positive, for the city and for the residents as well. That's how I see it.
Absolutely, I totally agree. I think there are some really good spots to kind of do some tactical, surgical type development of that. I think about the back parking lot at where SARS is, where you have some just kind of random parking areas. I think about how overparked some of our commercial centers are, like you said, Rite Aid. There's some definite opportunity, even just to do little tiny projects. Some of those parcels along Rigby Avenue, even if you just had 1,000 square foot office and 4 units behind it, that's 4 more units than we would have had before, So I think there's definite opportunity here.
I agree 100%. Thank you.
Tony?
Thank you.
Yeah, Ray, I just wanted to also mention that I know in the last few years, you all have had a real emphasis on property design, especially commercial property. So it's aesthetically proper, things like having the parking in the back instead of next to the street and those type of things, to where now with those concepts in mind, you can really make something very, very cool.
Absolutely right. And the beauty of that is we don't even have to change the code to kind of affect that, because we have our design regulations and guidelines document that does all that. And I think what you could easily say, if you're doing horizontal mixed use, then you have to put the parking in the back. If you're doing horizontal mixed use, you have to do certain things. But again, they benefit the community as a whole. There's lots of benefits here. There's the benefit of getting affordable housing and all that goes along with that. But at the same time, the benefit can also be aesthetics. When you drive down the street, do you like what you see? And I think that's a big deal. It improves everybody's lives, whether we know it or not.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Well, I thank you, Ray. A great presentation this evening, and something to look forward to doing. It's coming to light a little bit, I think.
It is. It's exciting stuff. I like it.
Our agenda this evening is the monthly department update. Development Senior Services Director David Cool will take us through that. If there's something on the hot plate.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. This month on the Council Action Update, I just want to give you an update on things that you've worked on so you can see the progress and success ratio. The Council approved the adoption of Ordinance number 1914, which was the zoning code revision for the Central Business District standards, which repealed the development moratorium. So that was successful. Also, they approved the adoption of Ordinance number 1919, the 2020 Comprehensive Plan Amendments. So you just saw those recently. And then also the initiation of the annexation for the Good property on Gun Club Road. So all that was they just initiated it to start it. So they haven't actually annexed it, but they've initiated the annexation to start the process to start the petition. Also in the current planning world, things that are going on in town, the final plat for the Howard's Point subdivision we talked about earlier tonight. That's moving forward. Talking to Ray Lindenberg, he suggests that could possibly be ready in April. So that'll go fairly promptly. We have 15 houses that are already plan checked. And so once the final plat is approved, those houses will all probably pull building permits and start construction. We currently have 4 homes in the Howard's Point subdivision that are under model home permits. And of course, those are model homes because the final plat is not done yet. Also, the Hillside PRD civil plan is under review. That's engineering review. So that keeps going back and forth to the engineering department. The U-Haul project out on Highway 20 keeps going back and forth. We've requested a speed study from the Department of Transportation to look into possibly lowering the speed out there to make a access point possibly safer for U-Haul if that were to move forward. There's other complicated issues going on with that project, but just wanted to give you a quick update on that. And then the Rotary Bridge is moving forward. So we've been working fast and furious on that along with the Rotary, and that is moving, I think, to a logical conclusion. And so I think that's going to be successful very soon. In long-range planning, you're familiar with the housing plan. That's still moving forward. Dennis didn't talk about that tonight, but you'll probably get a briefing on that fairly soon. And as you know, the horizontal mixed use, you just talked about that, and the Shoreline Master Program tonight. Also, the joint planning area is a big deal with us, and we're working with Island County on that. And I'll be having a conversation with Meredith Penny real soon at the county to continue that conversation. So we're attempting to make sure that stays as a high priority with them because it's a high priority for us. And this is kind of what I'm trying to do is just give you a snapshot of the basic things that are happening in the department. We again decided to do this as part of the regular agenda because we found that doing it before the meeting probably didn't quite meet the rules and regulations that should be followed. So, and what I can do is if you have questions and things that you want me to give you a report on for next time, let me know, either tonight or between now and the next meeting, and I'll be happy to do some research for you and give you a report on that kind of thing. So if it's a current planning item, we know for sure that McDonald's is being torn down or is currently gone. As I drove by today, and it's gone. So, and we read the sign, it says they'll be back in business by July. So that seems to be the most important thing in town. So there you go.
Yeah, no Big Macs between now and July. But I'm sure we'll survive. Any other? Oh, Tony, you have a comment?
Yes, Director, I just wanted to say I appreciate this memo, this update very much. Keeps us all in the know, so we feel like we know what's going on. That's awesome. And again, I appreciate you speaking with Penny, with the county, and working on our joint planning. So I just wanted to say thank you, and I appreciate it.
Christy?
Yes, I kind of touched on this a little bit earlier with the rest of us when we were just kind of checking in. I do have a question. I'm getting a lot of questions, probably because I actually worked for the Gary Oaks project for a while. I think since I did, I'm getting quite a few questions about what's going on there. I see online that they're under review still. I'm just wondering, other than the city website, like where it says the current projects, is there somewhere I can send folks to? I don't want to give out incorrect information or get myself in any hot water. But I know there's such a shortage out here right now in housing, being a realtor and also working for Navy housing. I'm getting it on both sides. The Navy folks are frustrated that they can't find homes to afford, and I have the locals who, of course, are looking for stuff as well. So I guess I'm just kind of wondering, I know it gives very vague information on timelines and where these new developments are at, but since we're at kind of like over a 2-year mark for when I think the last major announcement was made saying like that there was, I think if I'm remembering right, there were 700 or so homes in the works. And now here we are. I know COVID kind of changed things, but from what I'm hearing, we're looking at about 50 realistically this year coming to fruition. So is there anything I can do for folks who are asking me information to send them somewhere that might be able to give them some unbiased information?
Certainly. Thank you for the question. Those are questions we enjoy entertaining. You're free to call us at any time. You have a question you need to be answered right away, but Sarah does a really nice spreadsheet and report that we put out monthly, and the city administrator has a real nice report that has updated information on all the developments, the status, particularly Gary Oaks is in there as well, the hillside development. And we've got a new report in there that has all of the current projects, where they stand, what the likelihood is of them developing this year. And so you'll be able to see how many houses could come online. I think the last estimate we had was possibly 50 to 70 homes this year, and up to 90 apartment units this year are certainly in the queue. As you know, in the development world, the construction prices are up, material prices are up, and so developers seem to be kind of on the fence a little bit about what they're doing. We've got a number of projects that have permits, so they have approvals, and developers or contractors just aren't pulling their permits just yet. So we're kind of in a holding pattern.
That's excellent. No, thank you. I think that's a really good start. I've bugged Sarah a little bit, so I'll kind of continue down that avenue. And then also just, yeah, I think it's great just if we can have that communication with the community, because, you know, I try not to go down too many rabbit holes on the social media, but I know the more information we can provide, the better, you know, the less craziness that goes down. So I've been sharing some of those links and stuff, hoping to kind of rein people in. So thank you for the answer.
You bet.
Any other comments this evening? Anyone? Blaine, would you like to comment?
Yeah, thank you, David. Reminding me of the city administrator's report. That's a monthly one, and it's going to be a little bit more detailed. So it's at the end of the packet for the workshop. You can go online with that. And so like David said, he's going to give that to the council, and certainly that's open to the public. And so that's a great resource, and it's a little bit more comprehensive. Timing wise, I mean, you're going to be able to see whether it's in the hands of the developer or the hands of the city staff. The problem we have is when it's in the developer's hands, we just don't know how soon they're going to respond, and that's the difficulty we have. We kind of know by law that we have to have timelines on it, so you can see timelines on staff response when it's in civil or other approved processes, but it's just on the development side, we just don't know what it is. And so they submitted another plan to us back on Gary Oaks, and then we submitted it back for response. And so we just don't know how soon on Gary Oaks that they're going to respond back to us, and how well they're going to address our concerns that we raised. And so it's really hard for us to know where it is when it's in the developer's hands. So I know I'm not being definitive to you, but unfortunately, Dave and I just can't be definitive when it's relying upon the developer to get the plans. And even when they get it approved, but we don't know how soon that they're going to pull the plug on doing the development. So it's really hard for us to estimate how soon they're going to pull it on it. So certainly with the housing crunch, it's council's priority, and I think Plan Commission probably priority too, is to move it along and to get as much housing in the market as we can.
I have a question about the 11 homes that was approved on Scenic Heights. Where that is, if anybody knows for sure, is it?
Yes.
What stage is it in?
The homes on Scenic Heights, the walls are permitted, and the civil plans are approved and paid for. The developer just has not gone forward with the project at this time. So next step, they just need to start going on it.
Thank you, David. Just a reminder that a month from today, the 23rd of March, we will have our next meeting. If there are no other comments or questions, I call the meeting adjourned. Thank you, folks.